The house loomed like a relic from a forgotten dream, all gables and ironwork, its siding choked in ivy, its windows dulled with the grime of time. Lena Carver first saw it under a sheet of morning fog, standing alone at the edge of a long-disused cul-de-sac just outside the town of Wisteria Hollow. It had been uninhabited for nearly 5 decades, and yet the structure endured with a stubborn kind of grace, refusing to collapse, refusing to forget. She stepped out of her rented Jeep, boots crunching the gravel, as silence pressed in around her. Even the birds seemed reluctant to sing. A crumpled letter rested in her coat pocket, the will from her great-aunt Lorraine, a woman she'd never met. The house had come to her unexpectedly, left in trust, for the blood kin most inclined to shelter broken things, whatever that meant. There had been no phone call, no ceremony. Just a manila envelope postmarked from a long-defunct law firm and a skeleton key tucked between pages yellowed at the edges. Lena had taken it as a sign. She was 29, recently single, newly unmoored. Her architectural firm in Austin had quietly folded during the tail end of the pandemic, and her lease expired the same week. The house, she told herself, was a project. A fresh start. A beautiful disaster in need of vision. What she hadn't expected was the mirror house. That was what locals called it, though no one had said why, not yet. She found out quickly enough. The front door groaned on its hinges, sighing like a person exhaling after a long wait. Dust spiraled in the sunlight, and for a moment Lena stood motionless, eyes adjusting to the dim. The interior had the skeletal elegance of a Victorian asylum, wide central stair, tall wainscoting, ceilings too high to be cozy. And mirrors, everywhere. Not just in frames. Full mirrored panels inset into the walls, cracked silvering in Art Deco bevels, even shards embedded in molding like teeth. The reflections warped and bent as she moved, catching slivers of herself at odd angles. It was grotesque. It was beautiful. She was hooked. She unpacked in stages, sleeping the first night in a weathered chaise beneath a vaulted sunroom ceiling. With each room she explored, the house revealed its eccentricities. The library was perfectly sealed, yet the scent of pipe smoke hung in the air. The second floor had an inexplicable cold spot near the east window. The master bathroom had a floor-length mirror embedded in the ceiling, directly over the clawfoot tub. It was obscene. She loved it. Lena had always been good at marketing. She knew how to document a renovation, voiceovers, sped-up sanding, mood music laid over rusted hinges creaking open. Her TikTok channel, Build Witch, had a modest following when she started. Nothing major. Just a few thousand fans from design school, some curiosity seekers who liked haunted architecture. But once she posted the first video of the mirror house, the algorithm sunk its teeth in. The views exploded. Not for the craftsmanship, not at first. It was the reflections. Yo, pause at 0:37, something moves in the mirror behind her. Who TF is that in the study window? Enhance the audio. Someone's whispering, not yet. At first, Lena thought it was a trick of the light. Viewers saw what they wanted to see. She leaned into it, played it up. Spooky hashtags. Glitchy filters. But then came the clip from the second-floor hallway. She had been narrating the discovery of a hidden dumbwaiter. Harmless. Mundane. But in the full-length mirror opposite her, a man stood behind her for a single frame, tall, gaunt, in an old-fashioned vest and cravat. He vanished the moment she turned. Lena had been alone in the house. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she met Esther Clark. The widow lived across the narrow field bordering the back of the property, her own farmhouse set far from the road. She arrived without invitation, stooped and windburned, wearing a shapeless coat and pushing a rusted wheelbarrow full of apples. "You shouldn't be here," she said by way of greeting. Not alone. Not in that house. Lena squinted against the sun. "You're Esther." "I knew Lorraine." We used to take tea and pray for the walls to collapse. Lena laughed, then saw that Esther wasn't joking. I'm just fixing it up, she said carefully. It's a restoration project. My background's in architecture. Esther cut her off with a dry smile. You can't restore what don't want restoring. That house watches people. It keeps things. Lena shifted uneasily. You mean, like memories? I mean blood. Screams. Secrets. Everything it sees, it remembers. She left the apples on the porch and did not return. By week 3, Lena noticed patterns. Her tools went missing, always the same ones, her favorite hammer, a specific chisel, her utility blade. She'd find them in odd places, the bathtub, the attic steps, balanced upright on the mantel as if staged. More unnerving were the whispers. They came from the mirrors. She tried to tell herself it was feedback, maybe the old HVAC waking up, or wind squeezing through window panes. But some of the whispers sounded like words. Stay. Mine. Not yet. She recorded one late night while painting trim, just to prove to herself it was nothing. But when she slowed the audio down to analyze it, something clear came through, a male voice, faint but insistent. Where is my face? The TikTok clip hit 2.3 million views in 48 hours. Lena's follower count tripled. Offers for podcast interviews and TV rights poured into her inbox. She ignored most of them. Because now she was genuinely afraid. The attic was sealed. She discovered it one night around 2 a.m., jolted awake by a noise overhead, a soft dragging sound, like someone pacing in socks. But the blueprints she'd found in the basement made no mention of a 4th level. Still, there was a hatch in the upstairs hall ceiling. Someone had nailed it shut with 6-inch iron spikes, driven in so deep the wood splintered outward like it had been trying to burst free. She stood under it for a long time, breath shallow. The sound stopped. The next morning, the hatch was smeared with fingerprints, too large to be hers, and far too high to reach. She found a name in the town archives, Dr. Jonas Vellum, the house's original owner. A psychologist who specialized in behavioral mirroring. His practice, once prestigious, ended abruptly in 1978 when he vanished without trace. Police reports hinted at oddities, rumors of patient disappearances, soundproofed rooms, seances masquerading as experiments. But no charges were filed. The file ended cold. The house was boarded up months later. In one grainy photograph, Lena saw him, the same thin face from the mirror. She closed her laptop, hands shaking. Esther returned just before the first frost. You need to burn it, she said flatly. Now. Before the walls start to answer. Lena tried to laugh. You sound like my comment section. You think it's a story, Esther whispered. You think this is branding. But that man you saw, he lived in those mirrors. He made them into doors. And he isn't gone. Just waiting. Lena stepped back. I've already posted renovation updates. I'm kind of stuck now. Then don't turn your back on your reflection, Esther said. Because one day, it won't match you anymore. That night, Lena filmed in the library. She was halfway through describing a warped cornice when her phone slipped off its tripod. It landed face up, still recording. She didn't see what it captured until later. In the reflection of the mirror across the room, she was still standing, still talking, while her real body crouched to pick up the phone. The reflection didn't move. It only stared. Smiling. The cameras arrived on a Tuesday. Lena installed them herself, 10 in total. Discreet, motion sensitive, equipped with infrared for low-light recording. She placed them at key locations, hallways, doorways, the central staircase. But 5 of them she aimed at the mirrors. Directly. She didn't care about privacy anymore. She wanted answers. The setup took the better part of the afternoon. As she calibrated the hallway feed, her own face ghosted across the monitor, the reflection slightly delayed, just long enough to make her flinch. The glass shimmered, then settled. No glitches. Yet. That night, she left the lights off and let the house record itself. She reviewed the footage the next morning, bleary-eyed and jittery from bad sleep. For hours, there was nothing. Shadows shifted. Pipes creaked. Once, a raccoon padded across the porch. Then the timestamp clicked past 3:12 a.m., and everything changed. It began in the study mirror, a sliver of movement at the far edge of the glass. A shape. Human. Barely visible at first. But over the course of 4 minutes, it coalesced, a gaunt man in a long, pale coat, standing inside the reflection. Unmoving. Hands at his sides. His face indistinct but angled slightly downward, as though watching something. The feed ended at 3 hours and 16 minutes, exactly. Lena sat frozen, replaying the segment again and again. The figure never moved. Never blinked. But each night she reviewed after that, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, he was closer. Not physically walking, but advancing in the frame, step by imperceptible step, mirror to mirror, room to room. By Sunday, he was standing in the upstairs hallway. Just beyond her bedroom door. She took the footage to the police. Detective Albie Rayburn looked at her like she was drunk. "Miss Carver," he said, folding his hands over his gut, "you're either very clever or very sleep-deprived." Lena pulled up timestamps. It's the same window every night. Same figure. Same expression. You think I faked 6 separate recordings to prank myself? Rayburn shrugged. It could be a projection. Someone with access to your system. Deepfake stuff is scary good these days. You think I'm staging this? He leaned back, sighing through his nose. I think you're in a very old house, very much alone, getting famous on the internet for being scared in mirrors. If something real happens, call us. Otherwise, maybe take a break from the cameras. He handed back the flash drive without looking at it again. She didn't sleep that night either. Her phone buzzed with TikTok comments and reposts. Her followers, now edging toward 500,000, dissected every frame, circled blurry limbs in red, whispered theories of ghosts, tulpas, memory loops. But the longer Lena stared at the figure, the less she believed it was a ghost at all. He was watching her. Waiting. She needed to know what for. The crawlspace was barely 3 feet tall, more void than room. Lena found the entrance behind the basement furnace, hidden by a false wall of crumbling drywall and lath. She crawled inside with a headlamp and gloves, sweeping her hand over dust-caked dirt and rusted nails. 20 feet in, she hit metal. It was a lockbox, heavy and old, sealed with a corroded padlock that crumbled under bolt cutters. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, were dozens of small reels, old 8mm film, neatly labeled with handwritten dates and sets of initials. No names. Just cold clinical organization. The earliest reel dated January 2, 1975. The latest, March 15, 1978, the day before Dr. Jonas Vellum disappeared. There were over 100. She borrowed an 8mm projector from a college archivist 2 towns over, who raised an eyebrow at the volume. You digitizing a family tree or solving a murder? He joked. Lena didn't answer. Back at the Mirror House, she set up a screen in the library and fed in the first reel. The picture flickered to life. A teenage girl sat in a high-backed chair in what looked like the same room Lena now occupied. Her eyes were swollen. She stared at her lap, barely speaking. A voice off camera, smooth, male, asked questions. Tell me what she said to you. She said it wouldn't stop unless I let her out. Who is she? The girl's voice cracked. The mirror won. In the mirror behind her, he stood, Dr. Vellum. Perfectly still. He did not speak. Did not move. He simply watched. The girl began to sob. Please, I just want to go home. I want her to stop looking at me like that. The film ended at exactly 3:16 a.m., confirmed by the timestamp etched on the corner. Lena's hands were shaking too hard to reload the next reel. She watched 12 more that night. Each featured a different subject: teenage boys, young women, sometimes even children. Each one terrified, agitated, as if forced to return night after night. Vellum's voice was always calm. His presence in the mirror always the same: fixed posture, pale coat, face devoid of emotion. In every reel, the session ended at 3:16 a.m. Without exception. On the fifth reel, a patient named IG began to scream uncontrollably at 3 hours 15 minutes and 45 seconds. The screen cut to black mid-cry. On the ninth, a boy sat catatonic while something, Lena swore, moved behind Vellum in the mirror. Something that didn't have a shape. Just a hunger. By the 12th, Lena was vomiting into the kitchen sink. She stopped watching after that. She didn't realize Esther Clark was missing until 2 days later. Her apples still sat uncollected in the bowl. Her farmhouse looked dark, the yard overgrown. Lena walked across the field, calling her name. Nothing. A neighbor eventually confirmed it: Esther hasn't been seen since Monday. Thought maybe she went to visit her daughter in Albany. But her daughter had been dead since 1998. Lena filed a missing persons report that evening. The police took it politely. They asked if Esther had dementia. They did not investigate the field. They did not search the mirror house. But Lena did. That night, she rewound the surveillance footage again. Through each static-smeared minute, the house slept. Rain tapped the eaves. Dust drifted. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the figure returned. Not just in one mirror now, but all of them. Simultaneously. In every room, Dr. Vellum stared outward. Mouth closed. Eyes blank. But this time, at 3:16 a.m., he moved. Just a fraction, his head tilted, almost imperceptibly. And behind him, in the silver blur of the upstairs mirror, Esther's face appeared. She was screaming. It took Lena 2 days to work up the nerve to leave the house. Not from laziness or denial, but the mounting dread that something would follow her. She had begun covering the mirrors at night, even unplugging the cameras. But somehow, the reflections still found her. She saw them in her phone screen, her coffee, the polished blade of her utility knife. And always, at exactly 3:16 a.m., the whisper came. Confess. The retired archivist lived on the edge of Dunsloe County, in a barn retrofitted into a screening room. Bernard Raskin, 83, smelled like pipe tobacco and lemon cleaner. A former preservationist for the State Historical Society, he was nearly blind in one eye and didn't seem impressed by Lena's fame, only curious about the reels. They're genuine, he said after examining the film stock. Kodachrome 8mm, manufactured mid-60s to mid-70s. This reel here? The emulsion degradation puts it around 1968. Where'd you say you found these again? A family property, Lena said, lying. He nodded, distracted. There's magnetic striping on the edge. Sound film. You'll need a sync projector to digitize, I've got one. She watched him scroll through a legal pad, logging each reel's dates and initials. It took Bernard 3 hours to sort through the full lockbox. When he finished, he looked up slowly. These aren't home movies, he said. They're session tapes. Institutional. Lena leaned forward. What kind of institution? Raskin stared at her for a long moment. Then, carefully, He placed the last reel aside and tapped the cover of his notebook. "There's a pattern here," he said. "Each subject appears multiple times across consecutive days. Then they stop. No resolution. Just abrupt endings." He circled the final date on one of the entries. March 14, 1974. Subject: J.W. "This name," he said. J.W., Judith Wepler. "That's a real person." A missing persons report filed the same week in Wisteria Hollow. He slid a stack of cross-referenced documents toward her. He'd been busy. Lena's stomach turned as she read the list. Judith Wepler, 17, missing March 1974. Samuel Koss, 22, missing June 1975. Iris Glenner, 19, missing January 1976. Dana Ellis, 14, missing August 1977. 31 names in total. All matching the initials. All last seen within 72 hours of their final filmed session. None found. Back at the Mirror House, Lena sat in the cold library, flicking through her phone with trembling hands. Her followers were demanding updates. Theories were turning vicious. Some believed it was all a stunt, a film project, maybe a viral horror series. But the others were beginning to believe the house was real. She posted nothing. Just silence. That night, she dreamed of mirrors shattering from the inside out. It was in the attic that she found the truth. She'd gone up to install motion lights and check for raccoons, armed with a flashlight and crowbar. Most of the attic was insulation, cardboard boxes, forgotten trunks, and a heavy dust that coated her lungs like ash. Then her boot slipped between rafters and hit wood. Lena pried up the slats to find an old canvas roll tucked into the insulation. Inside, blueprints. They were dated 1966, stamped with a sigil from an architectural firm that no longer existed. Across the top margin, handwritten in precise calligraphy, was a name. Vellum Institute for Psychiatric Correction. Her breath caught. The diagrams were meticulous. Floor by floor. Room by room. She recognized the library, the study, the upstairs halls. But beneath all of it, beneath even the foundation, was an entire level she'd never seen on any official survey. A hidden floor. Sub-basement level -1. It wasn't a bunker or wine cellar. It was a surveillance facility. One-way glass rooms. Control hubs. Channels for reel-to-reel recorders. Integrated microphones and psych-reflective chambers, small, bare rooms with a single mirror on one wall and a bolted steel chair facing it. Each labeled, Confessional A, Confessional B, Congruency Trial Room 3. At the center of the plan, a small square labeled simply, JV, Control Office. Her fingers trembled as she turned the page. There was more. Marginalia. Handwritten notes. Subject requires a mirror at all angles, never allowed to look away. Refusal to confess prolongs exposure. 316 threshold appears consistent. Record results nightly. Congruency is only achieved when the self no longer resists. Lena dropped the pages and stumbled back. It wasn't therapy. It was torture. That night, she searched the basement for signs of an access point. Behind the furnace, she pulled away the remaining drywall and found it, a narrow iron door sealed with a padlock and painted over so many times it had fused to the frame. She used a crowbar and hammer until her arms ached. The lock finally snapped. The door creaked open. Behind it, a narrow stone stairwell spiraled down into the dark. She didn't go in. Not yet. But from the bottom of the stairs, she heard it. A soft mechanical hum. A reel-to-reel tape, running. And beneath it, a whisper that slid along her spine. Confess. Lena waited until just past midnight. The house was still, almost reverent, as if it knew what she was about to do. She wore a headlamp, a bodycam rig, and carried 2 battery backups, a crowbar, and a flashlight duct-taped with red gel to preserve night vision. The basement was colder than before. The iron door still hung open. Beneath it, the stairs spiraled down into darkness like the throat of some ancient beast. She began her descent at 12:47 a.m. The air thickened the deeper she went. Cold, sterile, and electric, like a server farm or an old morgue. The stairs ended in a narrow corridor paneled with steel. The floor sloped slightly downward. Her boots echoed louder than they should have. She passed through 4 doorways before reaching the first cell. Each one had no number, just a small etched plate, congruency unit, followed by a letter. Inside were metal chairs bolted to the floor, a mirror mounted across the wall, and what looked like a long-dead speaker grill embedded near the ceiling. The mirrors, despite the lack of maintenance, were clean. Too clean. In the 4th chamber, she saw it, scratched directly into the wall, in shaky, frantic gouges. She came through the glass. IG. The initials matched one of the reels, Iris Glenner. A runaway, declared missing in January 1976. Her last tape ended in a scream. Every room she passed told a similar story. Etchings. Claw marks. Full paragraphs rammed into steel. I see me but she's not me, DE. I won't confess. I won't give her that, SK. IT smiles when I cry, JW. Each signature was a name Lena knew. Each one had vanished. She found the control room deeper in. At the center of the underground floor plan was a steel-paneled command center with an observation wall, 10 windows of one-way mirror glass that looked directly into the confessional cells. A reel-to-reel recorder still sat on the desk, long dead. Shelves on every wall were lined with cassette tapes, carefully labeled and organized. Most bore clinical titles: Post-Session Audit, DE/February 22, 77. Others were marked with strange names: Self-Splintering, Subject 12, Incident 3, Disassociation Loop Failure. Lena loaded a cassette at random. It crackled to life with warped hiss. A voice, clear, calm, and articulate, echoed from the speakers. Mail. Cold. Post-session log, March 5, 1977. Subject, IG remains in an agitated state. No confessional breakthrough. However, she displays potential for high-yield congruency. Mirror response time, 3.2 seconds. Echo behavior initiated. Observation ongoing. The voice clicked. Then another recording began. Dr. Vellum again. Slower this time. Measured. Like he was thinking out loud. Some minds do not fracture. They reflect. And when they do, they become dangerous. The mirror doesn't show the truth. It waits for it. And when it finds it, it keeps it. Click. Static. Then Lena's camera battery died. Darkness swallowed the room. Her breath caught. She scrambled for the spare battery, fingers trembling. When the cam finally powered back on, with a beep that sounded too loud in the silence, she glanced at the preview screen to adjust focus. And froze. The reflection in the lens wasn't hers. Not anymore. It was him. Dr. Vellum. Smiling. Watching. She bolted up the stairwell, lungs heaving, heart stammering against her ribs. The house seemed wrong when she emerged. The walls too close. The reflections too still. She didn't sleep. She didn't speak. She didn't post. But someone did. The next morning, her TikTok was flooded with comments on her last upload, a short video she'd posted 2 nights earlier, her explaining the blueprints in the attic, nervously tracing lines on old paper. It had seemed harmless at the time. But the comments were different now. Who's the man standing behind you at 038? Look at the mirror, why is your reflection still smiling after you turn away? Okay Lena, this isn't funny anymore. Are you okay? That's not your voice at the end. Who said, confess? Pause at 3:16, just trust me. She watched the video again. Her voice. Her hands. Her outline, all exactly as she remembered. But when she looked closer at the frame behind her, in the glass of the picture frame, just above her shoulder, he was there. Dr. Vellum. And as she turned away, her reflection stayed frozen for half a second too long. Still smiling. It started with screaming. Esther Clark's old caretaker, a soft-spoken man named Jeremy Miles, was walking past the Mirror house on an early February morning when he heard it. A woman's scream, faint, like it came from inside the walls. He called the sheriff's office at 6:42 a.m. By 7:10, officers had arrived. They knocked. No response. The curtains were drawn. Lena's car was still in the driveway, crusted with frost. The TikTok account had gone silent for 11 days. The responding officers forced entry through the front. The house was cold. Too cold. Inside, the rooms were in disarray, sheets torn off mirrors, tripod rigs knocked over, the air thick with dust that didn't match the season. A single hallway light flickered continuously. Upstairs, her bed hadn't been slept in. But the basement door was sealed. Welded shut, from the inside. It took a full hour to breach it. And even then, they didn't go far. What they found was enough. Dozens of reels. Film canisters. Unmarked cassette tapes. Surgical notes. Steel diagrams for mirrored reflection immersion therapy. The corridor below led into a full subterranean complex, clearly undocumented, clearly illegal. And in the center of it, on a stool beneath the largest one-way mirror, was Lena's phone. Unlocked. Still recording. The final clip was 42 seconds long. The video begins with Lena staring into the camera. Her face pale, lips cracked, eyes frantic and hollow. A red glow flickers across her face, likely from the backup light she carried. She whispers. Barely audible. He never left, she says. He became the mirrors. The more people watched, the stronger he got. Every click. Every repost. Every time you slowed it down to see him, it fed him. Her breath catches. She leans closer. If you're watching this, stop. Turn it off. He's watching you now. Then, a flicker. The glass behind her seems to ripple. The recording ends. The case went cold quickly. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No forced exit. The working theory was psychotic break, possibly self-harm, though nothing in the evidence supported it. Some speculated Lena staged the whole thing, vanished to start a cult or film career. Others whispered darker theories, possession, mirror-dwelling entities, a viral curse that used the camera to spread. The local police department closed the file under unsolved disappearance. No further investigation was conducted. Lena Carver became the subject of endless podcasts, horror threads, reaction videos, and Reddit theories. But no one went back to the Mirror house. Not for a long time. Until 2 years later. A YouTube ghost hunting group known as Parasite bought the property, announcing a 6-part live stream series exploring the Vellum tapes. The trailer hit 1.2 million views in 4 days. The first live stream aired on October 31st, midnight sharp. It ran for 26 minutes. Then the feed cut abruptly, static and silence. No official explanation was given. But viewers who scrubbed through the archived footage noticed something in the final seconds before the signal dropped. The group was gathered in the old confessional chamber, speaking to the camera, joking nervously. And in the mirrored glass behind them, their reflections didn't match. One of them smiled. But the person in front of the camera wasn't. The archive was deleted 72 hours later. But some say if you watched it live, your screen still flickers at 3:16 a.m. And sometimes, just for a second, the reflection watching you smiles back.